The Florida judge who approved the FBI raid on former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home is set to hold a hearing tomorrow on whether to unseal the investigators' probable cause affidavit. This as we learn agents interviewed former White House counsel Pat Cipollone and his former deputy earlier this year as part of this investigation. Meantime, in a Truth Social post, President Trump suggesting he has security footage of the search despite the FBI allegedly demanding surveillance cameras be turned off during the raid. Join me now, former Assistant FBI Director, former FBI agent Chris Swecker. He's an attorney in Charlotte, North Carolina. Chris, always a pleasure to see you. The hearing tomorrow, good morning. The hearing tomorrow on unsealing the affidavit, is there a chance that that does see the light of day? It would be highly unusual. True?
Yeah, it wouldn't be unusual because these affidavits get unsealed all the time when a judge decides there's no real purpose to keeping it sealed. But I doubt very seriously you're going to see this unsealed tomorrow. I believe that there are multiple confidential sources. Their information, at least, is in the affidavit. Their identity probably is not, but you could probably identify them from the information they provided, and they're in the Trump camp. So I don't think they want to compromise those sources. The information itself, you know, talking about the classified information or the sensitive information, they could refer to that generically in the affidavit, or they could redact that in the affidavit if they wanted to. But I don't think anybody wants to unseal this thing inside the government. No.
But every sober-minded American, every person in this country who cares about the nation and certainly the disunion that's gripping it understands that the Justice Department and the FBI need to show what necessitated and justified raiding and searching the home of a former president, upending more than 2 centuries of norms and standards in this country.
Sunshine would be the best disinfectant here. I agree with you 100%. And most of the people in my circles that I talk to, judges, police executives, lawyers, academics, just regular people and former colleagues, and they are all questioning whether the Justice Department can apply justice equally, if you will. And that includes the FBI. I mean, what I've heard is that just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to do it. And that, in this case, because of the backdrop, the lethargic way that the Hillary Clinton case was pursued, the lack of any visible investigation in Hunter Biden, compared to the zeal in which anything Trump is pursued, has got people's attention. And these are people who in the past have been strong supporters of the FBI.
Chris, because the backdrop is an FBI that went to the FISA court to spy on a member of the Trump campaign using a dossier that was fake, that was put together by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Hillary Clinton, she got it easy from the FBI, regardless of what her supporters say. Again, she was interviewed after the Comey statement, along with her attorneys who were essentially co-conspirators, and her answers to the FBI, if it was anybody but Hillary Clinton, would really have warranted lying to investigators, which that very thing. Martha Stewart went to prison for 5 months for lying to investigators. I could go on, but how does this play out? How does this investigation play out? Can you give us a roadmap based on your experience?
Yeah, I mean, we know from the search warrant that there are some very serious charges involved, and one involves basically obstruction, possible destruction or destruction of documents or concealing documents with a corrupt purpose. That's a 20-year count. The other one is espionage, traditional espionage type count, and then the other one is concealing documents. So these are serious charges. The way it plays out, I think, Dagan, is I think they have this taint team. They're going to review all the evidence for attorney-client privilege information. It's going to take a long time. It's going to drag out. And my sense of it is, in the end, they're going to do nothing. I think this is going to be a big bang, but no, all hat, no cattle, as they say in Texas. And I say that because I just don't think this attorney general has the wherewithal and has, has the goods, if you will, to indict a former president for something this minor.
Andy McCarthy has said all along that this was used to, I made the comment that the FBI agents should have been carrying like rods and reels and buckets of bait when they were going into Mar-a-Lago because they were looking for something else. And Andy McCarthy has suggested that this was a way to collect any evidence that could be used toward a prosecution or indictment related to January 6th. And Andy said that I would bet the American people will be kept in the dark until there are either January 6th indictments or the Republicans retake the House and the Senate, and then you could get to the bottom of what really happened within the FBI and justice.
That's very possible. When you do search warrants this broad, you're basically fishing with a huge net, and you're catching everything besides what you're really trying to find, or at least in the four corners of the warrant says you're allowed to find. So they could be on a fishing expedition. The information that's gathered in certainly isn't just the information that was in the four corners of the search warrant. Those
Right.
documents are all over the place.
Right. They got the president's passports. Right. There were 2 expired, 1 current.
Right.
That's how kind of random the search and seizure was, is that they have
Right.
returned those 2 expired and 1 current passport to the president. Before we go, Wall Street Journal writer Bill McGurney's back after he suffered a minor stroke earlier this year, and he wrote about this. He said Merrick Garland goes solo in the Mar-a-Lago search, and Bill McGurney wrote, maybe what Biden says is true, that he and everyone else in the White House had no idea the FBI was executing a search warrant until they saw it on television. If so, that's even more disturbing. How unusual would it be that a president of the United States was not aware of what his Justice Department, along with the FBI, was doing to, for the first time in more than 200 years, search the home of a former president?
I'm highly skeptical, and anybody else who knows how the Justice Department interacts with the White House and with the FBI in general should doubt that statement, because it may not have been Merrick Garland to Joe Biden, but I guarantee you the staffers behind the scenes were talking. And I think it's just highly unlikely that they had no inkling that this search was going to happen. I think they have deniability at the top,
right?
But amongst the worker bees and the staffers, I think it's very likely that there was some conversation and they knew what was going to happen.
I would be mad if I worked in the White House at a high level and didn't know in advance. But again, denial, denial, denial. Chris Swecker, such a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for being here this morning.